Hello and welcome back to Radio 1. So we're continuing with programming today and we're looking at formats. So we are looking at speech formats specifically from page 80 to page 86. And if we recap, what is a format? So we often talk about radio as if it were a living thing that takes on a life outside of the people who work at the station. Every radio station has its own personality through the music it plays, its on-air talent, and even its jingles. Most stations fall under specific radio format categories that are used to track audiences and attract advertisers so that the station can build its media brand. These categories are referred to as radio or programming formats. And some stations run multiple genres, but most have a signature tone and a signature style. Radio formats are selected to appeal to particular demographics and niches, such as particular age groups or ethnicities. In the South African radio market, radio stations have license agreements with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, so with ICASA. There are specific sets of conditions that have to be followed under these agreements or licenses. One of the conditions listed on these licensing agreements is that the programming format must be adhered to at all times. When applying for a license with ICASA, the applicant will define a format and target that they think fills a certain gap in the market for both listeners and advertisers. This format will be designed to reach a specifically defined niche segment of the listening population based on the criteria previously mentioned, so based on whatever criteria ICASA sets out. If the application is successful and the license is granted, this then becomes the programming format that has to be followed by that radio station. ICASA monitors whether a radio station complies with their licensing formats in South Africa. The radio research body of the United States, so Nielsen Audio, which was previously known as Arbitron, has one of the most comprehensive format lists. And it's a good example of the available formats that South African stations could use. They don't, but they can. And that's on page 74 in your textbook. Also keep in mind that although a programming format has been defined in a licensing agreement, these formats morph and they evolve over time as the trends in lifestyle and culture change and emerge. Okay, so a format can change. So let's start looking at these formats. This is called CHR, aka Contemporary Hit Radio, and there's only one in South Africa that's a commercial radio station, and that's 5FM. So 5FM's demographic breakdown there is 15 to 21 years old is 25%. 25 to 34 years old there is 37%, so the dominating station population group. Then 23% is 35 to 49 years old, and 50 plus is 15%. So contemporary hit radio was once referred to as a top 40 format. It traditionally plays only the biggest hits and the largest selling songs at the time. This format is described as playing new cutting edge music, current hits and popular hits from the last 6 to 12 months. So it's got quite a narrow assortment of songs or a playlist that's designed to draw in teens and young adults. The format's main demographic is people between 12 and 18. However, as you can see here, what we just mentioned with regards to their age demographic, this format has evolved to have a far broader reach. This is an exceptionally difficult format to program for, as it does not describe a specific kind or genre of music. Instead, the format is meant to reflect the popular content at the time. This leads to a very diverse and often confusing sound. A radio station adhering to a CHR format could, in 2019, have their A playlist which is the most popular and frequently played songs. Structures to include songs by Justin Bieber or songs by Lil Nas X, an Avicii track, Billie Eilish song, Lady Zamar, etc. And these all play in rotation can lead to a very disjointed sound if you consider the tempo and the listening experience of each track, okay? So look at today's top 40. It's got so many different types of genres. So we've got pop, we've got R&B, we've got hip hop, we've got amapiano, we have dance, etc. The CHR format has therefore been abandoned by many radio stations in the States, and only a few hundred CHR stations remain across the whole of the United States, which comprises of more than 300 million people. Those CHR stations that have remained successful now rely on big radio personalities and strong specialized music offerings. And one of these stations is the BBC's Radio 1, which is described as playing the best new music and supporting emerging talent. Because of the diversity and the frequent style changes in popular music, many CHR radio stations around the world have repositioned themselves as formats that originated from the CHR format and represent a new wave of CHR programming. If we look at some of these examples, you get urban CHR, and these stations that are listed as urban are said to represent genres that reflect a large number of Black music recording artists, with music such as rap, hip hop, soul, R&B, amapiano. So music can't be strictly defined by a demographic. Many ethnicities enjoy urban music, but the description here is intended to define where the original movement of this type of music came from. Urban CHR refers to urban stations that are aimed at young audiences. In the South African context, these formats are more popular than the standard CHR stations. If we look at the last release stats from YFM, a local commercial radio station based in Gauteng, they had 676,000 listeners per week in March 2019. If we look at a national CHR radio station, 5FM, with a far larger geographical distribution footprint, they only had 674,000 listeners per week at that point. This could be attributed to the challenges faced by the traditional CHR format. Other formats of CHR include dance CHR, often referred to simply as a dance station. The playlists include a strong focus on high-tempo electronic and dance hits, as well as dance remix of popular songs. This format is aimed at a younger audience, but South Africa does not have any licensed FM dance stations. In the UK, two examples are Kiss FM and Energy FM. The music mix relies heavily on mixes from popular DJs with longer music sweeps than most CHR formats. These formats tend to involve less talking because the tracks are longer per play. Then we get alternative CHR. Traditional alternative CHR formats feature mainstream pop, rock, and alternative hits. These formats are popular in Europe, and they have a large, loyal fan base. So here you might find artists like Billie Eilish, the Lumineers of Monsters and Men, etc. Then there's alternative dance CHR, and this is a hybrid CHR format born out of alternative dance music. So it's kind of a mix between the previous two. So this format plays songs from dance and alternative artists. And there's a Belgian radio station called Studio Brussels. That's a good example of a successful alternative dance CHR format. Then we get language-specific CHR stations. These are CHR stations that play a mix of CHR hits from a particular language. So the most popular of these are the Spanish CHR stations from South America and the United States. Other big players are French stations in Francophone Africa and Europe, and Korean and Mandarin CHR stations from the East. And then there are a few other CHR formats. These either offshoots or are hybrids of the formats that we've already mentioned. Their core target is a young audience, and they rely heavily on topics of popular and celebrity culture to drive their programming between and around the music they play. In media training, if we look at this, could be called a format grid. This grid helps to show the difference in the content of popular formats. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the differences in formats between CHR, AC, urban, and news or talk radio stations. AC, adult contemporary. Adult contemporary radio stations can also be referred to as the middle of the road stations. These stations target people over the age of 30 and play a mixture of contemporary hits from the past decade or two. These stations usually avoid new cutting-edge music unless it fits into the rhythmic sounds that match those of the decade in which they are focused. AC stations are in the business of providing the music that the audience enjoys, and they must therefore keep a close eye on trends within their demographic groups, as well as on trends within the music industry. They need to balance new popular songs with classics that the audience will remember and enjoy. If the music is too old, the audience may feel disconnected from the station, and the same thing could happen if the music is too new and perhaps not yet popular within their listenership. When discussing their choice of music, AC stations use the terms such as variety and mix to describe the selection and presentation of tracks they playlist to create a well-rounded, familiar, but not retro sound. So Shane of Shane Media Services described the difficulty of programming an AC station, stating the following on page 78 in your textbook. Adult contemporary is the most difficult radio format to define because the phrase has been used to market everything from hits to soft pop. AC is for the rockers who have grown up but have not yet outgrown the contemporary feel. Some prefer rock, some merely tolerate it. AC keeps them from changing their tastes just because they change demographic group. However, if these stations are programmed effectively, they can be highly successful. If we simply look at the share of audience in Gauteng alone, 8 of the top 10 radio stations here are AC stations. So number 1, Metro FM is a hot urban AC station. Number 2, Ukhozi FM is a language-specific AC. Number 3, Lesedi FM is a language-specific AC. Number 4, 947 is a hot AC. Number 5, Kaya FM is a soft urban AC. Number 6, Jacaranda FM is a soft AC. Number 7, Tobela FM is a language-specific AC. Number 8, YFM, one of the exceptions, is an urban CHR. Number 9, Motsweding FM, language-specific AC. Number 10, Jozi. Jozi FM is a soft urban AC. And Jozi is a community radio station. The biggest commercial stations also fall within the AC format, and those include Metro FM, KFM, Heart FM, Smile 90.4 FM, 947, East Coast Radio, OFM, Gagazi FM. Let's look at some of the other varieties. So under Hot AC, you get stations under Hot AC. This format has a slightly younger target audience than the traditional AC format. And you can gather that from the word hot. The music is new and cutting edge. Hot AC is a hybrid between pop and AC music and concentrates almost exclusively on current hits and music from the past 12 months, coupled with a small gold or older category that usually comes from a decade or two ago. Then there's modern AC. This is a hybrid between hot AC and a modern rock station. Campus and community radios. So if we look at the campus and community radio station Tuks FM, that's based in Pretoria, executed this format effectively for many years before they switched over to a CHR format, as the community they were serving became more diverse. Currently, there's no modern AC formats in South Africa, but this format is still very popular in the United States and in Europe. Then we have soft AC. This format has become popular for playing beautiful music, so which can be referred to as easy listening, and it's popular with people of 35 and older. Where the regular AC format plays music that's popular with their listenership, the age differences can be rather broad, as the group is not as nearly defined as in the soft AC format. Playlists may include songs that come from 1960s onwards, so usually ballads or love songs. Overall, the music is low tempo. Okay, so that was soft AC. Then we have the language-specific AC. These are AC stations that play a mix of AC hits from a particular language. In the South African context, the SABC runs 11 language-specific services that are mainly programmed as AC stations. Lastly, we get urban AC. This format is aimed at an older audience. Music on these stations are more focused on the soul genre and the ballads, and less on hip-hop music. Hot urban AC stations play current urban sounds such as hip-hop, dance, amapiano, gqom. The urban formats are popular in South Africa, and so it's interesting to see that the difference in the format grid of the urban-specific radio stations compared to AC and to news or talk radio. Just a little bit more info about these music formats. So CHR music, the size of their library is between 350 and 500 songs. Then there's the AC. They have a larger catalog between 500 and 2,000 songs. Then we get the urban formats. Keeping in mind, you get your urban AC and then your hot urban AC. And here it will depend on the extent to which the station caters for younger audiences with regards to how big the catalogs will be. Then we're moving on to speech formats. Major speech formats from around the world include news/talk, news/information, news/talk business, sport, talk, and political talk. South Africa currently has 4 purely speech-based radio stations. 3 of these are commercial stations, and one of them is a speech-based radio station owned by the SABC, and that's SAFM. So the other 3 are 702 Talk Radio, Cape Talk, and Power 98.7. These stations are all news/talk formats. Other music format radio stations, such as Kaya FM, Metro FM, and Radio 2000, make use of the speech format for speciality shows for limited periods. For example, Metro FM runs 90 minutes of sports talk. This was made famous by the sporting expertise of television and radio personality Robert Marawa, while Radio 2000 and Kaya FM run dedicated political talk shows. According to Jordan, stations that use the news/talk format feature a concentration of news, whether it's local, regional, or global, in addition to sport, weather, and traffic. These stations also host featured talk programming where multiple views are presented and listeners can participate through call-in segments. Tavor has separated and described 10 content areas that are common to most radio stations, and by plotting each format according to these content areas, we are able to compare them quite easily. So this table outlines the differences between CHR, AC, urban, news/talk and news/talk radio according to each content area. Here we can also see that music formats are influenced by how old or how new the music is. Newer music formats, such as CHR, appeal to younger audiences. AC formats, which play older music, appeal to older, more mature audiences. The urban formats can be separated into urban top 40 or urban CHR stations, and then urban AC formats, again appealing to different age demographics. So CHR, hits of pop, rock, dance nature, current bestsellers, some reliance on oldies and recurrent tracks. Stations emphasize dance or rock. AC, pop music aimed at an adult audience, softer than CHR, heavy reliance on oldies and recurrent tracks. Urban, range of rhythm, range of R&B, rap, hip hop, dance, mellow, jazz fusion, and gospel/inspirational. Station focus on adult or teens/young adults. And then news/talk focuses on spoken programming. So if we look at announcing in the different formats, CHR there, upbeat. Announcing style is rapid and hip in keeping with the format. It varies according to the day part. AC ranges from light, where announcers just read liners, to personality. Announcing style often depends on the day part. And then urban ranges from light to heavy, varies according to day part. Announcers on stations that are focused toward teen or young adults can be as upbeat at CHR, laid back on adult stations. And then we have news/talk. Talk personalities can range from supportive to outrageous. Some take a combative approach. News announcers need to sound credible. Sport announcers are allowed to be fans. Sports talk hosts take on the role of experts. Announcing styles, as with the music formats, have to match the needs of their audience. The format appeals to the target audiences they are trying to attract. So CHR stations appeal to a younger audience, thus the announcing is more upbeat and relevant to the youth. An AC station needs to appeal to an older demographic, and therefore the speech content and style needs to reflect their wants and needs. If we look at news on the different format stations, CHR as seen as something of very little interest to their audience. Emphasis is on lifestyle gossip news. AC, it's important in this format. There's a heavy emphasis on traffic and weather. Headlines read during drive times, primarily the morning drive. Urban, treated the same way as it's treated by the CHR stations. Adult stations provide news in a manner similar to AC. And then we have news/talk. These stations are in the information business. News is integral to the format. During normal times, news is heavily formatted. Formats are easily broken during emergencies. Then we look at jingles. CHR, used heavily by most CHR stations, required to be as contemporary as the music played by the station, obviously. AC, used as regular part of the format. Urban, some stations use jingles, others prefer to use voicers, and some stations use both. Both male and female voices are used. News/talk, used as breaks from talk. Jingles and imaging are meant to give a radio station a specific and a unique sound identity. The sound identity differs from station to station, but generally the CHR station imaging will be hard, loud, and pacey, while the AC station imaging will be smooth and more comfortable to listen to. Urban imaging reflects the boldness of the broadcasting and is usually driven mainly by dry voice liners, so recordings that have not been produced with X-ray effects. News and talk stations use imaging to separate talk links, and these are typically dry voice liners that tell the audience what they are listening to. Then we have contests and promotions. Under CHR, content and promotions are popular with this format. This can include cash and ticket giveaways, lifestyle prizes, trips, cars, etc. Can be performed via remote broadcasts, billboards, transit, bumper stickers, and TV ads. Under AC, contests and promotions are popular. This can also include cash, ticket giveaways, lifestyle prizes, cars, trips, etc. And again, it can be performed via remote broadcasts, billboards, transits, bumper stickers, direct mail, TV ads. Under the urban category, again, it's popular with this format, taking into consideration that it can be both CHR and AC. So it includes what we've previously mentioned, and they're also often performed via remote broadcasts from dance clubs and community events. Then lastly, news/talk. The stations will promote their ability to cover news and respond to emergencies. This can be performed via some remote broadcasts, billboards, transits, bumper stickers, and print and TV ads. Then we have features. So CHR features are things like countdown shows, artist spotlights, request and dedication shows. It's fun daily features or benchmarks that focus on entertaining the audience. AC features, things like love song, request and dedication shows, countdown shows, artist spotlights, oldies weekends. Daily features or benchmarks focus on entertaining, educating, and making the audience feel included. Then under urban, again, countdown shows, artist spotlights, request and dedication shows, programs hosted by celebrities, and oldies weekends. News and talk shows like features like health, finance, consumerist, year in review, weather, science, political shows. Music features are relevant to the three music-based formats. So CHR formats often include fun or funny features, while AC formats tend to entertain, educate, and inspire. Urban stations often make use of local celebrities. News and talk stations station features are usually helpful features and are aimed at providing information. They typically teach their audiences about something they didn't know, or they demonstrate how to do something. Then we have commercials, and under CHR, AC, and urban, they usually use spot clusters. Some stations use distributed spot schedules. CHR commercials are designed to fit with the station's image, and urban commercial spots are designed to target a specific audience. News or talk use distributed spot schedules, and commercials are less of an intrusion on stations, which is the primary program element. Then public affairs. Over the years, different countries have experienced various government regulations regarding public affairs and the mandate of radio stations to deliver this style of content. In unregulated markets, CHR stations usually steer clear of this type of messaging, instead looking at public affairs messaging that inspires the audience. AC formats have typically pushed these types of messagings over the weekends. Because urban radios have a community focus, public affairs messaging is common and have an inclusive, relatable feel. News and talk stations rely heavily on public affairs messaging in their content mix. Then you have history. And lastly, the future. And what does the future hold for these formats for radio? CHR, as long as there are hits, this format should exist. It's adept at reinventing itself to stay current. AC, some stations will choose to follow their audience as it ages. Others will elect to stay with the same demographic group. Urban stations reinvents itself by developing sub-formats, and news/talk, there should always be a demand for information and services provided by this format, always. And that brings us to the end of this lecture. You should now have a very good grasp between CHR, AC, urban, and news/talk format radio. We will continue with our format journey in the next lecture, where we will start by looking at digital formats. So until then, I say goodbye for now. So bye.